two of the Booker T. Washington 25th Economic Development Summit. My name is Barrett Vaughn. I'm your Master of Ceremonies today. Today we are going to be discussing access to capital and digital marketing. We had a wonderful day on yesterday, lots of different wonderful speakers, and we know we're going to continue on today. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce Mr. Lawrence Haygood, the mayor of Tuskegee, Alabama, who's going to give us opening remarks, after which our keynote speaker, Mr. Jeremie Greer, the founder of CEO and co-CEO of Liberation in a Generation, is going to be speaking. So without further ado, Mayor Haygood.
Good morning, and thank you, Dr. Vaughn. It's exciting to be part of this day two of the 25th annual Booker T. Washington Economic Summit. Offer special greetings to the 9th president of Tuskegee University, Dr. Charlotte P. Morris, to our keynote speaker, Mr. Jeremie Greer, to Gary Walton, BTW coordinator, Dr. Barry Vaughn, our moderator, and the entire BTW planning committee. Those in the background, is Karen, Craig, Doug, and so many others who make this possible for us. I welcome you all to the Tuskegee community, which naturally is the home of Tuskegee University, historic Moulton Field, home of the Tuskegee Airmen, home of Lionel Richie, the Commodores, Tom Joyner, Chief Osceola, and so much more. And we invite you to come visit us in Tuskegee, Alabama, as soon as the pandemic is over, and Alabama has the pandemic under control, as we know. It is worth noting that the BTW Summit began in the Kellogg Conference Center on Tuskegee University campus. When it was no longer available, it was moved to Montgomery, Alabama, where Honorable Stephen Reed now serves as mayor, a historic setting within itself. But now, despite the challenges of COVID-19 pandemic, we see that the BTW Virtual Summit achieves a major milestone in its 25 years of successfully promoting Black economics, entrepreneurship, and collectively working together to strengthen and improve our communities. Tools of the Titans, envisioning the future of Black economics. A big shout out, kudos, and of course, congratulations to Tuskegee University for its continued efforts to serve our developing and business community and the community at large. Regardless of the conditions, 25 years of successfully, persistently putting out good information and offering assistance to our community, which is so badly needed. As Dr. Vaughn said, yesterday was outstanding. Beginning with a powerful speech by the author and advocate Maggie Anderson, followed by two exceptional panels led by Felicia Lucky and Grover Brown. Please review the valuable information that they offered yesterday and the lessons shared, because there's so much that we can use. And remember the intentional actions that were suggested and recommended if we are to improve economics in our community. We look forward to another exciting and powerful presentation on today, day two of the 25th annual Booker T. Washington Economic Summit. We know that our panelists will have some great things to offer. I'm excited. I was pleasantly surprised about what was offered yesterday. All the good information about preparing yourself as a business, the need for documentation, advocacy, so many things that were recommended. So please go back and take advantage of that, and let's get ready for the great information we look forward to today. So again, welcome to Tuskegee, Alabama. Unfortunately, we're going to work through this rainy day and going to have a day two, a great day two here in Tuskegee, Alabama. It's always a great day in the city of Tuskegee and all of Macon County. TU, yes, you know.
Thank you, Mayor Haygood, for those inspiring words. But we're ready for some more. We had a great program yesterday, and here we have Dr. Jeremie Greer to start us off this morning. So without further ado, here is Jeremie Greer, the founder and co-CEO of Liberation in a Generation.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn, for that. And thanks, Mayor Haygood. I really wish I could be down there with y'all in Tuskegee rather than here in my basement, but we're doing what we can. I look forward to seeing y'all when I come down there. I'm going to share my screen and because I'm going to go through a PowerPoint. Yeah, so a little bit about Liberation Generation before I get started. We're a national movement support organization working to create the economic liberation of people of color, Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian American people, but with a real focus on the Black community. in particular. And what I want to talk to you all about today is just give kind of a sense of like what it is that's really holding us back from getting this liberation. Talk a bit about what we are learning in the current COVID-19 pandemic, and hopefully look for a pathway to go forward to create that liberation for communities, whether you're doing it in straight up economic development work, whether you're doing small business work. Hopefully this kind of framing that I'm going to go through today will be of some use to you. But I wanted to start because I wanted to talk a bit about my father. My father was my first economics teacher. And I think the parents are all of our first economics professors. You know, he was a union bus driver in St. Paul, Minnesota. You know, and as you can imagine, the type of lessons he taught, you know, my brothers and I, you know, I'm there in that ugly striped shirt. And those are my brothers with me. And the type of lessons he taught us, you know, you got to work hard to get ahead. You got to get an education to get ahead. You know, you got to live a moral life to get ahead, right? And really instilling in me the idea that like I could control my own destiny, right? Like if I did everything right, I should be able to do well economically. But what I learned through time, and I think we all learned through time, is just being all of those things doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be economically successful, right? Like I know a lot of people and have known a lot of people that worked hard, got educated, lived a moral life, did well, and didn't get ahead economically, still lived in poverty, still struggled. You know, businesses still shut down, even though they still do everything right. And what I've come to know is that the lessons that we've learned about the economy, whether they're through our parents, whether they're through other people, whether they're through the media, whether they're through culture, as it relates to us as people of color, us as Black people, don't tell the whole truth. And that the real truth that we have to grapple with as a community, as a society, and how we address the problems that face our communities are three really ugly truths. Truths that are hard to like swallow, hard to like accept. And the first of those truths is that in our economy, racism is profitable.
Absolutely.
The existence of racism creates profit. And that the existence of racism creates wealth. It creates wealth not for us, but for elite institutions and corporations that are largely run by white folks. And that finally, it is not us. There's nothing wrong with us as Black people. There's nothing wrong with us as immigrants. There's nothing wrong with us as people of color. There's nothing wrong with us that has created the economic inequality that we face. It is racism and the racism that is built into our economic systems that is to blame for the hardship that we face. And that if we can grapple with those truths, it rounds things out in a way that we can really begin to dismantle the economic oppression we face and start to look toward the future in which we have economic liberation. I'm having trouble here with oh, there we go. So that existence of racism has created what we call liberation and generation, the oppression economy. And the oppression economy is the economy that we live in. It is the economy that was developed when the first settlers landed in this continent. It is the economy that built itself through slavery. It is the economy that we operate in today. It is the oppression economy. And in that oppression economy, there are systems and structures that are used to oppress people of color and to build wealth for other people. Some of those systems rely on theft, right? Theft of indigenous land, right? Theft of Black labor through slavery, right? Theft of labor today from immigrants and other low-wage workers that aren't fully compensated for the work that they do, right? This is baked in and built into our economy. Exclusion. In order to exploit people or take advantage of people, steal from people, you have to exclude them from the mainstream systems that other people benefit from, right? This is the underpinnings of redlining, right? let's keep capital out of these communities that Black people live in. Therefore, the predators can go in and pull wealth away from them, whether they were a business, whether they were a homeowner, right? That is how those systems are allowed to thrive. And then, of course, the exploitation, right? Exploitation of workers, exploitation of consumers. Black people pay higher costs for loans, insurance, milk, like just basic needs we pay more for. And that is that form of exploitation that is built and baked into our economic systems. And it thrives through what we call a cycle of oppression. And is what maintains it. This cycle begins with this, of course, the truth that racism is profitable. It continues with our own economic suppression, where the racial wealth gap is what drives a lot of the economic conditions that people are feeling today. And that racial wealth gap is maintained by our inability to vote. Now, I want to say, all of the voter suppression stuff that's happening around the country, it has economic implications and it has economic intentions. Because if we don't have access to the ballot box as people of color, as Black people, we do not have the ability to influence the democracy. It constrains our ability to influence the democracy that facilitates the ability for people to profit from racism. It is the government that plays a role in either deterring that type of activity or perpetuating that activity, which it has done for many, many years. And that our ability to influence that democracy is what could potentially dismantle it. In short, what I'm saying is that American capitalism, as it exists today, was built together in tandem with our racial caste system, and that they intentionally reinforce one another. And that the work that we have to do today is to pull those things apart so that they are not so interwoven that just by design, our economy will consistently and always oppress Black, brown, Indigenous folks. I'm a very visual person. I learn from seeing things. And this image is an image of St. Paul, Minnesota during the uprisings. And what you'll see here is, the caption in the picture was people looting following George Floyd's murder. But what I see here is people reacting to an economic system that they feel is holding them down. Target is the largest corporation in St. Paul, Minnesota. So it does not surprise me that the anger and the backlash that people were feeling was targeted at an economic institution like Target. So I don't see these people as looters. I see this person in the corner as a looter, but I see these people up front as people that are reacting to anger that has been present in their community. Now, I'll say I don't think it's productive anger. I don't think it's a productive use of that anger. I think in their own way, they're seeing themselves as dismantling that oppression economy that we've been talking about. So the question becomes, how do we begin to dismantle that oppression economy through tools of public policy rather than through violence and destruction? And what I'll say is I think that there's 4 ways to dismantle that oppression economy. One, we have to end the criminalization of people of color. The criminalization of people of color is one of the ways in which we are excluded from economic systems. Whether you're someone who has been involved with the criminal justice system directly, or if you live in a community that has been targeted or tagged as, a high crime community, it becomes the rationale and the reason for excluding Black and brown people from economic systems. We have to end the dual financial system. The dual financial system that we have today is one in which builds wealth largely for white individuals and corporations and businesses, but extracts wealth and pulls wealth away largely from Black, Latinx, Asian American, Indigenous people, businesses. And what we need is one financial system that builds wealth for everybody. That's what we hope to strive for. That we curb corporate power. Currently, large corporations have incredible power over people, workers, communities, consumers, our democracy, and that we have to rebalance that power so that people, and people of color in particular, have more influence over their economic lives. And finally, I'll say we have to end that political suppression, because it is through our ability to influence democracy that we will have the ability to pass the type of policies, not just to dismantle the oppression economy, but build the liberation economy that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. Again, I'm a visual person. So as this relates to COVID, so how does this oppression economy relate to the current conditions of COVID? And what I'll say is this is a picture of the New York subway system, of a New York subway car in March of 2020. And what I see here is, while everyone else was hunkering down in New York, sitting in there, staying at home, like the government was telling you to do, hopping on Zoom calls to go to meetings, ordering food in from DoorDash or Uber Eats to eat. Black and brown folks were out there in the world working to keep our economy going. They were out there on the subway, going to work. And you see, this is Black and brown folks. Because what happens in this oppression economy is we are consistently asked to sacrifice to hold up the good of all. And we put ourselves in harm's way. Public workers like subway and public transportation workers. Transportation systems didn't shut down during the pandemic. Workers were going to work, and a lot of them were Black and brown. Waitresses going to work, waiters to keep businesses going, putting themselves at risk when fools don't want to wear masks, right? College football players keeping us entertained, largely Black, unpaid, so that we could keep this economy going. And the result of that is why we saw Black people more likely to contract COVID, Black people more likely to die of COVID. It was not because of our underlying health conditions or all the things that people say. We were at greater risk because we were out there in the world working to keep the economy going. And this, to me, stripped the veil off of the oppression economy. It showed in stark relief what the oppression economy looks like. And that if we don't ignore it, we have a clear analysis of what our economy does to Black and brown people as it exists today, which makes it so important that we transition to a liberation economy. And I'll say the liberation economy is not something new. There have been people talking about or putting ideas out in the world that would create that liberation economy for decades. The Black Panther Party had a policy agenda that included many liberatory economic policies that would materially benefit Black and brown people. Martin Luther King had a poor people's campaign rooted on the idea of a basic income for all people that would be the economic underpinnings of a new economy. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt had the Economic Bill of Rights that, if passed at the time, maybe wouldn't have benefited Black people because of, racism, but it would have created the foundation that we today could be fighting for those same rights if they were passed back then. And the key about this liberation economy is that when we create it, it has to, again, accomplish 4 basic things. It has to ensure that all people's basic needs are met. All people are able to pay their bills. All people are able to have access to healthcare. All people are able to live in a community that is free of pollution and has clean air and drinking water. that it is that all people of color are safe and secure. They have a roof over their head that is affordable, that they are able to live a financial life where they're not a flat tire away from economic destitute, right? That is what wealth is about in many ways, having that cushion, that ability to live your life without constant disruption, that all people of color are valued in the economy. It is absolutely ridiculous that we will, in one hand, call a Publix cashier an essential worker, or a home health care aide that's taking care of our elderly an essential worker, and pay them poverty wages on the other hand. This makes no sense and shouldn't make sense. That if you're contributing to our economy, something so as important as keeping our food system running, you should be compensated for that value that you bring. And that we all belong. And when I say we belong in our whole selves. So as Black people, we belong. As Black, gay, trans, bisexual people, we would belong. As Black people with disabilities, we would belong. That there is no part of us that is allowed to be excluded from the economic systems that would deliver that liberation. And we believe that the pathway to this is to underpin these in a set of guarantees. And again, these aren't guarantees that are new. They've been discussed many times over, as I said, by people like Martin Luther King, Huey P. Newton, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and many others, and are still in the conversations today. Guaranteed income, guaranteed wealth, a guaranteed job, guaranteed housing, healthcare, debt-free college, guaranteed childcare and elder care. These are all things that we should be demanding and be able to expect from our economic system, and if not provided through the market, provided through the government, so that we can operate in this economy equitably. And what I'll say is, we're on the pathway to this now. It may not feel like it because we're in this COVID-19 crisis. There's so much poverty, and there's so much pain, but we're on the pathway to this now. And all we have to do is keep walking. For example, this conversation about expanding the child tax credit to make it permanent and refundable to all people is a step towards a guaranteed income for all people, right? That check that's coming in the mail or being dropped in the bank accounts is a step towards that. And all we have to do is keep walking, keep expanding it, keep making it bigger until it is adequate enough to fully cover the financial needs of folks. This eviction moratorium that just ended, unfortunately, but was housed, that kept so many people housed during the pandemic, is a step towards guaranteed housing for all. Like, for the first time, the government said, you know what? Everyone needs to be housed. And we are going to take public action to make sure everyone is housed. And that is what the eviction moratorium was. Of course, there were problems with it, there were holes in it, but that was the public policy statement that was made. And we're seeing this more. I mean, I would say vaccine distribution, as uneven as it's been and as troublesome as it has been, still is a demonstration of saying the government is going to make sure that everyone's health care is taken care of. We're not going to let your ability to pay to be the reason that you do or do not get a COVID-19 vaccine. And I'd say all of these things in this current pandemic are steps towards that liberation economy. And all we have to do is keep walking and keep walking until we've created. And I believe if we continue that steps, continue walking, continue moving forward, we can achieve that liberation in a generation that we hope to have. I thank you all for your time. Again, I really wish I could be in Tuskegee with you, but thank you very much, and look forward to working with you all in the struggle.
Thank you so much, sir, for those inspiring words. We really appreciate your participation in the conference this year. Um, we did have one question and we had one hand raised. If you could address the question in the Q&A, and I believe that tech may be able to allow the one hand raised to speak.
Okay.
Would you like me to read the question in the Q&A?
Oh, I got it. I see it. Yeah, it says how can Black organizations hire Black youth? I don't know, hire them? I don't know. I mean, I think it's yeah, I'm sure it's a question of more so related to resources and access to resources. And what I'd say is, I think it's important that we as organizations that are Black led make the argument to our funding, to our sources of capital, whether it's philanthropic funding, whether it's private capital, that one, it's important that we hire Black people and hire young Black people, but also do so in a way that creates that liberation that we hope to accomplish. Like, we as Black organizations should not be hiring people at poverty wages. And we have to make sure that our capital providers understand that we're not going to pay people at poverty wages. Therefore, they need to resources at a level where we can provide that same level of economic security to our employees. So I'd say that that's critically important and very important as it relates to, I think, the question of hiring Black folks in our organizations. I think it was Stanley that has his hand raised. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Mr. Mayfield, are you still there? You can go ahead, Mr. Greer, and hopefully he'll put it in the chat. We've given him permission to speak, but if he puts it in the chat later and you're not here, we'll make sure it gets to you, and you guys can communicate. Thank you.
I see a copy of deck. Yeah, I'll send that to the organizers and they can distribute it. How do you think is anonymous attendee says, how do you think opposition to all the possible items you mentioned? Do I think the opposition will succeed? I believe that it is incumbent upon us to do the organizing necessary to overcome that opposition. So I don't think it will succeed. And I don't think it will succeed if we do effective organizing to influence democracy. This is where that influencing democracy piece is key, because it is about influencing the government, not just at the level of once folks are in office, but actually choosing the folks to get to be in office and having them become the champions for the policy ideas that we want to see move forward. And I think that is the key piece to making it happen and overcoming that opposition that I think you're referencing in your question. Where do I suggest Black-led community organizations find funds and resources for funding nonprofit, for-profit? There's money out there. And I think the importance of bringing that money in is demonstrating the clarity and conviction you have in the mission that you're trying to accomplish. I think we as Black people often get to a place where we start to put things in words that we think that white power wants to consume information in. And I would suggest that that is actually in our detriment. And I think what is better is that when we put it in the words that we understand it and that the communities that we serve understand it and actually bring that to the source of capital, I think that that will actually bring the funds in, because that language and that way of talking is clearer and has more clarity than the ways in which we speak when we're trying to translate it into language that we believe white power can consume. So I don't think it's a much a question of where to find it or how to find it. It's more about how you're talking about the work that you're doing. And then there's one question, and just stop me when we're at time. So I'll just go down the list and stop me whenever we're at time. Can this liberation economy exist under capitalism? You know, this is a question I get a lot. And what I'll say is, I believe that the capitalism, socialism conversation is an incredible distraction. I don't think it is meaningful. And here's why. We live in capitalism. Capitalism existed in this country since its founding. So we have to figure out, and we cannot wait as Black people, as immigrant people, as people of color more broadly, for some complete overturn of the economic system. But what we can do in the interim is try to work within the confines of capitalism in the next 30 years, say, 25 to 30 years, to make capitalism work on behalf of Black and brown people. I think that we can do that. And those guarantees that I laid out, I think, are some of the ways in which you can do that. Because part of that is disrupting the idea that government doesn't have any influence over capitalism. Government governs capitalism, and it can govern capitalism in a way to be more equitable towards maybe a vision of a socialist future, if that's the place where people want to go. But again, I don't think that we have the luxury to wait until there's some ability to create a new economic system altogether. And I think there's one more question in the thing. How do we create sustainability in our economic systems through a liberation economy? I'm wondering if they're talking about environmental sustainability, I think is where.
Probably in the next panel. Next panel.
Okay. Oh, I'll just quickly answer. I think that we can create environmental sustainability, because if I think we link the well-being of people, you are naturally going to sustain and care for the environment at the same time. So I'll just leave it with that. And thank you all for this conversation. I look forward to, hopefully next time I'll be able to come down and meet with y'all in person.